Neogenics, vampires, and the scorpion. Oh my. This is the Superhero Pantheon. Now on this podcast, we will take 3 episodes of the Fox Kids version of Spider-Man that aired in the mid-90s and discuss/review. This is not for Pantheon eligibility, but is our side project for the year. My name is Jerome Cuson. You can find me on Twitter at JeromeC1985. You can find additional episodes of this podcast through Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast apps through the real world. We strongly encourage you to leave a 4 or 5-star review so as to help people discover this show and the great work that the folks at The Real World are doing. If you would like to interact with us or send feedback, you can do so by following us on Twitter at Hero Pantheon. My co-host for this week and every week is Brian DeBrain. You can find him on Twitter at Brian DeBrain. All right, Brian, this week we are discussing Partners in Danger, the middle chapters 4, 5, and 6. That will be the return of Kraven, Partners, and The Awakening, respectively. We get a lot more of Spider-Man and Black Cat flirting, but we also get a lot of plot. Oh my God, Brian, do we have a lot of plot to talk about in all 3 of these episodes, but especially episode 5. So much plot.
Well, I think out of the 3 episodes we're reviewing today, I think episode 4 is the least amount of plot. It's like the simplest because it's just the return of Kraven and basically what Kraven, I guess the formula that Kraven took went into Mariah. And that the whole mystery of another wild beast amongst New York City's wildlife happens again. So.
All right, so we are gonna start with the return of Kraven. We find out that Aunt May is going to stay with Mary Jane's Aunt Anna. We don't get a lot of Anna in this season, and I am just relieved because she is just such an annoying character. And from a logical standpoint, yes, she should be emotional about Mary Jane, but all she's going to do is complain about Spider-Man, and we have enough of that going on in this season as well. Spider-Man is just very angry in this episode, and that's kind of been the running theme kind of with everything that's happened with Mary Jane, with Felicia, just a lot of irritability on his part, and he is questioning again whether he even wants to continue to be Spider-Man, but he has to be because the Kraven has returned. I did like that Felicia saves Peter in a really great moment. Like, again, we talked about last week that there was a female writer on the staff now, and this is an example of it. The fact that we get Felicia saving Peter in a situation that is a sign that you're getting a little bit more equality.
Really quick, I wanted to note that this was the last episode of Linda Gary. She voiced Aunt May. She passed away on October 5th, 95. It says here in the trivia, so kind of sad this was her last episode. Only a few lines, but pretty historic considering that we remember her voice a lot as the Aunt May from our childhood. So it's, pretty historic. And she was replaced with, it doesn't really say here who replaced her in this note, but it's very unfortunate. But that's probably why that she only had like one line at the beginning and hardly went back to her later in the episode. But I do like the idea of Kraven coming back only because I like the idea of him hunting throughout New York. And we didn't get a whole lot of that in the previous episodes, but they did more of that here and explored all like the botanical gardens and all these different places in New York that you wouldn't really think of when you think of New York in terms of like this great place with wildlife. So I like that kind of idea that New York does have this nice wildlife side to it that we really don't explore, and they got to explore it here.
They did get to explore that, and that was very, very much appreciated. And I think that the basic idea of this episode is that we get the return of Deborah and Flash as they are investigating Morbius. We'll talk more about that in the next episode. We get the Stalker and Kraven and kind of how that pays off. And again, I love the tragic elements of the Stalker character. Like, the Stalker is not a bad person. It's just Dr. Mariah Crawford. And this is a bizarre episode. I don't necessarily think this is a bad episode, but it's just really bizarre. Spider-Man is really angry. Black Cat is seemingly the person that is kind of trying to pull him back. And we even get Spider-Man saying that he may be open to love someday. And then the next shot is him knocking on Harry's door, which I think is pretty funny.
Oh, man, poor Harry. He feels like so left behind right now, unfortunately, because, like, even Spider-Man, Peter Parker says that he loses his father and he loses the love of his life in the same day. So it's like, oh, that's such a hard way to put it, man. But it's true, and he's kind of, like, trying to be there for him. And I don't know if they're roommates at this point, or they agree to be roommates at this point, but it's just going to be one of those things where it's like, you're trying to be my friend, but you're not really there for me kind of thing. And I feel so bad for Harry. But that's what it kind of comes down to, man, and it kind of sucks. But with this whole thing of the Kraven stuff going on, I don't know, I thought it was just kind of a fun way to bring the character back and kind of put like a bow tie on the whole storyline with the arc, because the idea is that his wife took the serum as well, because I guess she was trying to cure COVID in some jungle or something, and she got it, and she was about to die, and so she took the same serum that Kraven did, and turned her into the same kind of thing, but she doesn't know how to control the powers yet, so they kind of have to like figure that out. And they kind of loosely figured that out at the end. And originally, Spider-Man was about to kill the Stalker, and before Felicia gives this incredible speech. Of course, it's from a female perspective, which is just perfect, because we probably would have gotten that 2 seasons ago. But this idea that the way that Kraven was talking about this person, like he's talking about his love, the person he loves. Like, you couldn't figure that out, Peter. And you can tell, like, oh man, Peter is still like not catching on some of these things that a female would. You know what I mean? That female intuition that was seriously lacking in the show. And now that Felicia's got that female intuition with that strong superhero voice now that she has, and that stern character that she has, like it's really, really contrasting well to what Spider-Man has. And it's kind of like showing you the weaknesses of Spider-Man, just because, like, it's not necessarily, male intuition. It's very 50-50, man. Believe me, as a male, it's like, huh? You're trying to tell me what? Sometimes we don't pick up on those things, and Felicia picks up on those things really well. And the fact that she was able to figure out that it's, it was her, Mariah, I just thought it was great, because it shows you that it's that female intuition that's really saving the day in these episodes.
Yeah, I think that Felicia is the heart of this season, and I just think it's really unfortunate that the final season is not going to have her nearly as much if the ideas of what's going on with Mary Jane at that point. So yeah, it's nice that we're getting this good run of Black Cat, because we're not going to really have her in the final season. So I'll be very curious to see how this particular storyline pays off. But I think that episode 4 is a delight, though, compared to episode 5. Brian, you are going to be in charge of explaining the plot for episode 5. But somehow this episode brings back Neogenics. We have Dr. Connors. We have Silvermane. We have Toombs. We have the Scorpion. We have the Black Cat. And we have Spider-Man. These are all people and creatures that are in this. It is incredibly difficult to watch and incredibly difficult to explain. So, Brian, what is going on in episode 5 of season 4, Partners?
Well, let's start out with the fact that Silvermane is a baby, and the fact that he's a talking baby with the mind of a 90-year-old man, or whatever how old he is. It's weird. It's very weird, because there'll be times where he's just talking normally and like, Spider-Man has got to go down. He's not part of the plan or whatever. And then all of a sudden he says, now change my diaper. And I'm just like, oh, you threw me off there, because I was not expecting that line. So that's that style of humor that's going on, that baby G-rated humor, where I'm an adult but I'm a baby kind of humor going on. So you got that. So Silvermane, I guess Silvermane hires Alistair Smythe, who's now, like not a cyborg, but a genetically altered thing, who's trying to reawaken his father once again. So he's like, "Oh, Father, I will resurrect you once again, but I don't know if I'm just falling for more false promises." So it's that same dynamic that he has with Wilson Fisk. And so for some reason they need I don't know, the Scorpion or something. It got kind of confusing as to why the Scorpion was even in there. Uh, yeah, it was just kind of weird because then we got Toombs tied up at Scorpion's house. I don't even remember what Scorpion kidnapped Toombs anyway, and he wants Toombs to turn him back, and then he needs to steal money. I don't know. It's confusing, and then somehow Toombs ends up in the Silvermane plot line or something. I don't know. And then he basically makes Silvermane an old man again, and then he takes all of his youth. Somehow Spider-Man and Black Cat were all involved somehow, and somehow Scorpion almost hit his wife. Almost hit his wife or something like that. And then his wife was just kind of like naive to the fact that there's no way they can afford to build a laboratory with $500 savings kind of thing going on. Very weird stuff going on. Very much I think they were making fun of the working class, to be honest, with that's line about the $500, but that's just me. Yeah, a lot of weird stuff going on. And by the end of it all, we get young Adrian Toombs again.
We do get young Adrian Toombs. That is a true fact. Yeah, this episode is just an absolute mess, and it's very choppy too. I think that's the other thing, is that it just feels like they're going from scene to scene, and it sometimes feel like something is missing or something of that nature. So yeah, this is just it's really unfortunate that we've had a pretty good run. The first 3 episodes, I would say, are really good. Episode 4 is a little bit on the weak side, but this is definitely probably in the bottom 2 or 3 episodes. I know we talked about a couple really bad ones in season 3, but this is I would definitely put this one right on the list as well, just because there's a character at one point even says they're going to neogenic him or something, which to me that just symbolizes what is wrong with this episode. We had neogenics. We talked about it in season 2. Unless there was a really good reason to bring it back in season 4, like it had some connection to the Mary Jane storyline, it should have been left in season 2, and it was not.
Yeah, and I'm still not sure why they had the Scorpion in here, because I guess he was part of the original neogenic thing at the beginning anyway. But yeah, Martin Lando's no longer the voice. Again, I guess they were making some changes with the voices. No, not too many famous celebrity voices, so they got rid of him and replaced him. Really, that's kind of it. Like, it's just so weird because the Scorpion thing is like, what is he gonna do? Have Adrian Toombs tied up in his house for like years until he gets a lab for him? What?
Let's move on to Chapter 6, The Awakening, shall we? We get Spider-Man dealing with mixed emotions as Mary Jane is gone, but he has seemingly fallen in love with the Black Cat. They tease a mask exchange and flirt. Again, this is some of the best stuff that is in the season, and we get a lot of it in this episode. We get Dr. Connors having a press conference. Morbius is basically Man-Bat, and he has announced that he is going to try to save him, but the world is certainly not having this. Deborah and Flash are back. Deborah is looking for a cure. Flash is kind of mad about it, but why is he helping her then? I just that really never became clear to me. We get Felicia claiming to be going to the West Coast, and Peter just assumes that she's going to cover his class. Like, Peter continues to be kind of a dick.
I didn't even know you can cover classes like that, and I went to college for 5 years, man. I didn't even know you can just be like, hey, can you go sit in for me and take notes? Like, why didn't I think of that? But again, I don't know. Maybe it's like 90s college thing. I don't know. For some people who did that, I guess. But yeah, this was a very, I would say, fun. Because some of the Morbius episodes were not good, but some are really interesting concepts. Here again, their whole, kind of dancing around saying he's drinking blood. Like he needs plasma, he drinks plasma, but then in other sentences they'll be saying blood. So it's just like, okay, they're just kind of dancing around it again. I get it. But I thought this was a lot of fun. And I think Deborah Whitman, we need to have this conversation. I think she's just riding Flash Thompson along for the wrong reasons. And she's holding this like flame for Michael Morbius that was never even a thing between those two. And it's really unfortunate for Flash Thompson. I think she's just using him. and I think she's putting people in danger for her own selfish reasons. But again, that's just me. So I think that's my opinion on
the most bizarre aspect to me is that Felicia is the one that actually dated Morbius.
right, and she's the one that's dealing with the more emotional side of it all because the fact that he came back. So she's dealing with that, and the fact she's falling in love with Spider-Man, but also dealing with her new powers and doesn't know how to handle Michael Morbius and whether or not to kill him. But Deborah, man, it just feels so like, what are you doing? There's like, you're doing this for the wrong reasons. You're endangering people's lives. But again, I don't know. But it just feels like she's just kind of getting away with it. I don't know what that means, but it's very unfortunate, man. I'm really feeling for Flash Thompson more so than ever because he's just being strung along, man. And there's been those relationships that you got to kind of get strung along with, So there you go. Just saying.
I love the fact that Spider-Man is blaming himself for what happened to Morbius, and then we get a flashback, and indeed it is reinforced that Spider-Man really is the person that's at fault. I had a good laugh at that. We get Felicia realizing that she cannot go to the West Coast and that she needs to stay. We get Landon. So Landon and Kingpin want to be immortal, and I feel like this is never something that's come up before, and it feels kind of weird. Like
Maybe
all
they
of a
just thought
sudden,
of the idea. I think he just maybe thought of that idea once he saw that Michael was back and that, because he's, I guess, technically immortal, that like, hey, maybe we can be immortal too. Kind of shooting the shit. You know what I mean? Maybe like a offhanded comment that, piqued Kingpin's interest.
so we get a lot of Black Cat saving people. We do get the return of the Shocker. We don't really. It's one of those things where, just like the Scorpion appearance in the previous episode, it's like, do we really just want to bring back the random villains because of contractual obligations? They want to sell toys. I don't know what the reason is, but the Shocker is just in this episode. And one of the funniest things that is in this show, in this episode, is when Spider-Man is concerned that he is getting mixed signals from Black Cat. Had a good laugh at that one.
He definitely was getting mixed signals, but it's just like, dude, I think it's the wrong time to be kind of contemplating that right now. But it is what it is, man. That's kind of like the again, what I loved about these episodes, the melodrama of it all. And it's definitely a lot of melodrama going on between those two. So, do they bring up the relationship at the wrong missed opportune times? Yes, they do. That's just kind of the nature of comic book love storytelling kind of thing. Having romantic discussions at the wrong time. Can we discuss this later? We got a bomb to defuse or something like that kind of going on. So I do enjoy that. Again, Black Cat I think is just kind of stealing the show, and it feels like Spider-Man is just kind of becoming the side character to her. But that's just kind of this run of episodes.
So I think you bring up a really interesting point about the tension that exists between the two, and the thing that I really appreciate about their relationship is that there's a little bit of banter, but a lot of it comes from a place of sincerity, and there is actual romance. I think part of the challenge that I've seen with a lot of superhero movies is that they have gotten away from the romance, and it's just a lot of quipping, or it's almost asexual in nature, which is why I think Batman that came out in March was so refreshing, because it felt like there legitimately was a romantic dynamic between Zoe Kravitz and Robert Pattinson, and you haven't really seen that. And I think that you got a lot of romance in a few superhero projects. Like I remember when we talked about Batman 66, we got some romance. We got a little bit of it in the Wonder Woman movie, but then Wonder Woman 84 proceeded to completely ruin it. So we've had it, but we've never ever had it in the MCU. And I think that part of my frustration with the MCU is just that they refuse to have a sincere romantic interaction of any sort. Like even the movies that purport to have more romance, especially post Joss Whedon, like I think you got a little bit of sincere romance in Captain America: The First Avenger and the first Thor movie, but then you can look at the Thor movies, you really haven't gotten it. You really haven't gotten it in the Iron Man movies, and none of the other. It's just all quips. And even with Peter Parker and MJ in the Spider-Man movies, like their relationship is kind of cute, but they don't really get sincere moments. And I also contrast that not just with superhero movies, but a show like Stranger Things, which that is a show that has evolved a lot, but I think despite the problems that I have with season 4, and I'm not going to spoil any aspect of Stranger Things for those who may not have watched the very elongated episodes, but it just feels like there is a beating heart. There is a lot of sincerity with those interactions and with those people. And that's something that I wish that especially the MCU had.
Yeah, it's seriously. I mean, what I really enjoyed about this is it's the adult kind of themes to it, and maybe that's kind of what we're missing because we kind of had a little bit of that like Iron Man 1, where he was kind of unfortunately being a womanizer, but at the same time was kind of doing that adult kind of thing. And then once Disney kind of took over, they kind of took that back seat to it. But I see what you're saying, and I think one of those sincere moments you get is like Endgame with the dance sequence at the end. But again, that was like years of build up because we haven't seen that. We haven't seen them since first Avenger being together like that. So I get that, why that was a big romantic moment. But again, I see your point as well. It's like it's not in the whole movie, which is kind of why like I've been waiting for like a Felicia Hardy to come into the Spider-Man universe and kind of have this romantic relationship, but with like an older college level Spider-Man. But obviously they're not going to go down that route now. I mean, you could still do it with Andrew Garfield. I think that would have been the better choice to do it with this kind of like Felicia Hardy relationship. I think that works much better with Andrew Garfield. I don't know. We'll see. Because he does want to come back, but it's a lot of money on the line. And to do a Black Cat movie, with her in it, you got to really like establish her. So I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to take one movie because the way that this arc worked in the show, it's like we saw her for 2 or 3 seasons just being like just normal. And now all of a sudden that she got the super soldier serum, she's like this badass and she's a completely different person. It's like the breath of fresh air that we needed in the show. So I don't know if that's going to work in the movies or if they can try to do it in the movies. I'm just kind of concerned if they ever bring in Felicia Hardy as the Black Cat that they're just going to miss the whole thing and just kind of rush everything. And it's not going to mean as much as it does in the show. So
I think the remarkable thing is that for a comic book organization that Marvel is, it's remarkable to me that they can't do the episodic storytelling that is involved with comic books. Like, I understand the movies are their own thing, but to not be able to do TV shows, like I think Marvel has not been able to do, like, to me, Spider-Man 94, maybe it doesn't have the actors, maybe it doesn't have the live action component, but honestly, I've had a lot more fun watching the Spider-Man animated series than I have most of the MCU TV shows, and I think it's because there's better storytelling and there's more interesting storytelling. Like at the end of this episode, like Morbius just flies away and he's kind of out the wind. So you could get Morbius again, you could not, but like he's just out there. That's kind of how comic books are supposed to work. And you also get interactions between Spider-Man and Black Cat. They are ongoing, but it's not like everything is in a mystery box either. Like there are straightforward villains in a lot of cases. So yeah, I mean, this is just kind of turned into me ranting against the MCU right now, but I think this episode was definitely the strongest. It is a more interesting story because they have done all of this work building up the Peter Parker Felicia relationship, then transitioning into them interacting as Spider-Man and Black Cat. So I think that's where they've gone right, and it feels like that. It feels like they've made a lot of the right choices with that relationship. Even though some of the plots have been rough with 4 and 5, you could definitely see in 6 where they're putting the time in is making a difference.
absolutely. The fact that the last action part or like the last action scene was, the thing with Morbius getting away and Felicia not being able to shoot him. So we just saw that in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So it's just like this idea of like not being able to kill someone you love from your past. And it's just like, I guess it's true, man. It's harder to do it than we think it is, to pull the trigger or whatever. So I thought that was a really great moment because she's like almost like in tears and just almost breaking down. It's just like she can't do it. And she lets Michael get away, and then it becomes this thing now where it's just this complex thing because now she's in love with Michael still. Can we save Michael? They almost saved Michael for like a brief second, but they ran out of power. So does that come into play next time? It leaves a lot of open questions, but a lot of good questions to like leave open for you to explore later on. So I thought they did a great job with that kind of open ending. But you kind of like it goes back to like Michael's alive, and you can tell that Felicia still cares about him. Does that affect the relationship that she's trying to have with Spider-Man? So it gets really, really complex. But at the same time, that's kind of like a lot of what real life relationships end up becoming is like these complex issues of different situations and choices. So it's kind of very, reflective and real life stuff. And I think that's why, as we've gotten older, we've appreciated these episodes more, especially me. But like when I was a kid, I was more interested in the neogenic nightmare stuff. You know what I mean? Like the monster stuff. As I've gotten older, man, I really love this relationship between Spider-Man and Black Cat. So there you go.
It's been good stuff. I think it's been the highlight of the season so far. Next week we will be reviewing the 7th, 8th, and 9th episodes. We only have 2 more episodes for season 4 because it is only 11 total as opposed to 13 or 14. So we've got that to look forward to. And I know that I'm very curious to see how this is all going to pay off because I believe that Mary Jane will be returning to the show very soon. Any final thoughts, Brian, before we depart for the week?
I wouldn't say she's coming back. I would say she's coming back.
Mary Jane is coming back.
In spirit, quote unquote. There you go.
So for Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.
Can you imagine moonlighting with Spider-Man and Black Cat, except Spider-Man was played by Bruce Willis?